Welcome to the first lecture of Introduction to Haptics. In this lecture, I hope to motivate the good features as well as the drawbacks of the human sense of touch, as well as talk about why haptic technology is useful and also challenging. So these pictures are showing some of the people in my laboratory at Stanford University engaging in some haptic interactions. Sometimes they're interacting with inanimate objects like a pencil and notepad. Sometimes they're interacting with other people or animals. They're sensing forces, they're sensing tactile information on the skin, as well as temperature. The human sense of touch is really various in terms of what you can do in terms of interaction with the environment. To start off, I'd like to do something I call the Haptic Box Experiment because it'll really give you an idea of what are the advantages and limitations of the sense of touch. So what you should do is start by having a friend or someone in your house place several household objects into a box. Make sure they're not sharp or dangerous or wet, just typical household objects that you think you could recognize through the sense of touch, or maybe even things that you think you can't recognize through the sense of touch. After this person places the objects into the box, I want you to reach your hand in without looking and explore the objects using touch alone. So you could pause the video now if it's convenient and have someone do this for you and try to do a purely haptic or touch-based exploration. Once you've done that, before you look at the objects in the box, think about a few questions. First of all, what was in there? Could you actually tell what was in the box? Could you figure out if it was a screwdriver or a spoon or a stuffed animal? The other question is, how did you know what it was? When you recognized objects in the box, what was it about the way that they felt that gave you clues as to what they were? Turns out that people are really good at figuring things out through touch alone in a lot of circumstances. Tactual stereognosis is the idea that you can do this sort of mental perception of 3D objects using touch. Tactual or tactile just means via the sense of touch, and stereognosis is the mental perception of three-dimensionality. And usually it's with respect to perceiving the form of solid objects by touch. There have been lots of studies showing that people are really good at recognizing common objects through touch. In fact, one showed that if you have subjects try to identify 100 common objects, they could do it almost perfectly and in only about 2 seconds per object. These hands are pictures of a couple students in my lab manipulating things that are in our laboratory. And we touch things and we recognize them and we manipulate them without even thinking about it, which actually leads touch to be somewhat underappreciated. These haptic exploratory procedures that we use to learn about the world actually have some canonical characteristics. There's some researchers, namely Roberta Klatsky and colleagues, who have studied very carefully how it is that people explore the world through touch. And there are some examples on this slide. So for example, if you want to explore the texture of an object, the common thing to do is move the fingers laterally over the surface. And this motion is specifically good to find out about the small bumps and crevices that might be on a textured surface. Another type of haptic exploratory procedure is to find out about pressure or apply pressure in order to find hardness. And in this case, you would push your finger on an object and try to measure force displacement relationships. There are a bunch of other exploratory procedures, just a few of which I've sketched here, that Klatsky and colleagues identified. But one of the cool things about them is that these exploratory procedures are really well matched to certain characteristics of human tactile sensing in order to essentially optimize our ability to recognize objects and surfaces and shapes.